Oklahoma State's top 25 recruiting class has a ton of speed, talent, athleticism, and more than anything, substance. However, it does not have a consensus blue chip style of guy across all of the recruiting services, but an old school Big 12 battle could change that very quickly.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers could get $200 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. Get squared away at FanDuel.com today. And speaking of getting squared away, this current top 25 recruiting class is primarily based off of the meat and taters, the substance of it, a.k.a. numbers. And if you look at the top 25 recruiting classes, most of the teams hover around 9 to 12-ish recruits, but there are some that are down in the 6, 7, 8 range. So numerically speaking, Oklahoma State does have an advantage whenever you're talking about, 11, 12, 13 commits as opposed to 7, 8. It is going to give a little bit of a broad stroke view of the recruiting. However, if you were to land DaQuives Beck, the 4-star linebacker out of Carthage, Texas, that have had over 230 tackles in the last 2 seasons. This previous year, he had 21 tackles for loss. The year before, he had 9 tackles for loss, double-digit sacks. This is an absolute savage. He has track-level speed. He's a multiple-year state champion. This individual would do a ton for the perception of where Oklahoma State recruiting is going, because this is the knock on the top 25 recruiting class. Well, of course, you guys have a lot of really good dudes, but you don't have a breakout star. You don't have a blue chip level consensus 4-star All-American all the way across the board. And we don't, right? Trey McLaughlin is considered a 4-star in a couple services. You also have Katie Batman Jones as a 4-star in other services. But as it pertains to 247, where Oklahoma State is currently top 25, you have to look at DaQuives Beck being a legitimate option. He is down to Oklahoma State, OU, and Texas A&M. Now, obviously, this is important because we typically have a barometer of successful recruiting based off of Texas, right? Mike Gundy's talked about this multiple times. When the last time we played Texas in the Big 12 championship game, we had like 2 or 3 players on the roster that had received Texas offers, one of those being Ollie Gordon. And that was his kind of dream school. The only reason he didn't go to Texas is because he felt like they waited until the day before National Signing Day to step up to the plate. It was too little too late, so he decided to stay a Cowboy. Whenever you look at somebody like DaQuives Beck, who has essentially narrowed down his top 3, removing teams like Texas and Tennessee and Oregon and USC, this obviously puts Oklahoma State in a rare category. Plus, a little extra bang for the buck is recruiting against OU is obviously something that's imperative to the success of the future in recruiting. We've been narrowing it down to the state of Oklahoma, right? Win the state of Oklahoma in recruiting, have a better season, have a better opportunity to get to the CFP than the Sooners, and this could continue to be a trend. Now, I think Brent Venables is a brilliant mind defensively, and he's going back to calling the plays on the defense, so clearly there's a ton to sell. However, stability might be a little bit of an issue. If Mike Gundy has a rebound season, stability is no longer going to be a concern. We all want Mike Gundy to go out his way, right? Nobody wanted to see him go out at a 3-9 season, even if you don't like the guy. We want Mike Gundy to go out on top. I think that's good for Oklahoma State. It's good for recruiting. It's good for perception. It's good for image. It's good for all of those things. Not to mention, it'll be beneficial in whomever we bring in to be the next coach. In order for Mike Gundy to keep up this success, though, we have to maintain a top 25 recruiting class, because that is some of the things that you're hearing. Katie Batman Jones, for most of us, is kind of that cornerstone piece. But you also have to have some of those guys like Ollie Gordon that turned down Texas, like Trey Griffiths had a lot of big-time universities in on him. Landon Cleveland turned down Texas. Now you have DaQuives Beck that is turning down Texas. So if that is the barometer that we used to use for how our recruiting is going, how many of our individuals have Texas, Tennessee, USC, Alabama level offers, then this would be a phenomenal get. Not only because we could take down OU and kind of claim that throne to the best in-state recruiting team, but a former Big 12 foe, Texas A&M, is obviously in the mix. Now, Texas A&M is ATM for a reason. I do not think that would be the only reason that Texas A&M would garner the services of DaQuives Beck, because they also did bring in Mike Elko. He has a proven track record. He rebuilt things at Duke. He has a good system, and it seems to be somebody that a lot of players are interested in playing for. So this is a battle, in my personal opinion, between the OU situation with Brett Venables being a brilliant mind that could potentially go back to calling the plays and put DaQuives Beck in a very good situation moving forward. You have Texas A&M, who has a lot of expectations. There's always a lot of anticipation, and there's never going to be a shortage of dollar bills flowing around Aggie land. And then you have Oklahoma State, right? Kind of the upstart of the bunch, the black sheep of the family per se. Do we have OU and Texas A&M recruiting money? Absolutely not. Now, we clearly are spending way more than we ever thought physically possible. Right? Bringing back Ollie and all those guys was a big deal. What we're spending now is significantly different, especially in the acquisition department. So we're not clearly out of the loop when it comes to NIL. We're in this battle enough for him to, get rid of all of these SEC Big Ten schools to include Oklahoma State means we've made a powerful impact. Plus, we need big-time linebackers. And this is part of the sales pitch, I would imagine. We only had 5 linebackers that started spring as linebackers that made the cut, right? We had several linebackers that either got cut or were asked to leave in the transfer portal or decided to leave via problems with playing time more often than not. But Brian McCoy is a senior, 5th-year senior. So he's gone. Rawls is an older individual. Shandavian Bradley and Malik Charles and Rashad Bradley, they play that defensive end / linebacker role, so it is a little bit different. But I think we have some senior leadership, although they're mostly transfers. And when it comes to the youth side of the thing, guys like Tamarick Johnson and Gunnar Wilson may have been safe, but most of the youth was let go. So we have to have some more guys coming up. So there could be an argument for maybe not instantaneous playing time, but at least the ability to battle for it. We have mentioned time and time again the recent stretch of linebackers going to the NFL, most recently with Nick Martin. And when you look at the NFL Ourlads depth charts, they have Nick Martin starting right now already as a rookie in San Fran, right? And when you factor in the Malcolm Rodriguez and the Abing and Migas of the world, this could be absolutely massive for Oklahoma State. You have to have one of those marquee pieces. I mean, this previous season, I think Michael Riles was a 4-star in multiple services. That was also projected to go to Texas A&M. On3 had him as a Texas A&M Aggie. If you looked at his social media for a large portion of time, it appears as though the 4-star defensive Michael Riles was going to be an A&M Aggie, which is why I bring this to the equation. DaQuives Beck, according to On3, much like Michael Riles, is heavily in the A&M camp. I think they had it like 98.2% that he was going to be a Texas A&M Aggie, with the University of Texas underneath that at 1.2% or whatever it was. Oklahoma State was not in that equation, and OU was, but they were down in the 1% range. So we've kind of come from the ashes to be a part of this conversation. This is not a lip service moment anymore, though. Oklahoma State can no longer rest on its laurels and have the consolation prize of, well, we keep making top 3s. We keep making top 5s of some of these massive guys. This would be one of those Ollie Gordon level dudes. This would be, one of those Landon Cleveland, Michael Riles. I think you could even throw Carl Vion Young into the mix from this previous class. You have to have some of those cornerstone pieces that, A, check all of the boxes for all of the services. You have to have a consensus 4-star all the way across the board because it is beneficial in the end. Unfortunately, there are mathematical metrics that go into recruiting and on-field rankings. It's kind of a convoluted mess. But even if we know it is, you need to be a part of that convoluted mess. And landing an individual like this would do that. If you could get 4-star consensus All-American DaQuives Beck to be an Oklahoma State Cowboy, that would solidify the fact that this top 25 class is realistic. It's not just based off of numerical advantages. We're going to have some of these heavy hitters that most services do not think we're going to be able to get. They thought the same thing at one point in time about Michael Riles. He was a Texas A&M Aggie all day, every day, through and through, and he ended up becoming a Cowboy. So this is a possibility, And this would also put a stamp on the fact that Oklahoma State is a recruiting hotbed right now. And if we're coming to recruit somebody that you're interested in, you should have a little bit of wariness when you're seeing that orange and black roll up to high school events and campuses. This is a big opportunity. This would be a massive get. I think a lot of us are happy with the Katie Jones, the Trey McLaughlins, the Jason Bradfords of the world that we have. But you kind of need one of these, top 50, top 10 level dudes. He was like he's top 15 linebacker in the country, according to 247. He's like the number 8 overall linebacker in the country, according to On3. He's right around the top 10 in Rivals. So regardless, this is no doubt one of the top linebackers in the country who could play in the 4-3. He could play in the 3-4. I mean, heck, at 6'1.5", 215 pounds, he could probably even play some safety with that track level speed that it brings to the table. This would be huge, and he needs to make a decision to go with the upside, right? Don't go with the instability that Brent Venables might provide. Don't go with the craziness that is going to happen at Texas A&M because it comes with the territory. Come where you can be a consummate professional. You can focus on your craft without all the distractions, without all the ridiculousness, and you can be part of this new Todd Grantham NFL SEC system that is being installed in Stillwater. We need to make this commonplace, and a guy like this would absolutely do that. Speaking of making things commonplace, we need to find a way to capitalize on our monetary gains situation, and FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. Of course, you guys already know that, but what FanDuel is doing right now is they're allowing all of us to experience the playoffs a little bit deeper as the Thunder get ready to cut down the nets. Hopefully, every night is going to be highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, can't-miss moments. Whether it's going to be a game-winning shot or a breakout performance, a breakout player, there's not a better time than right now to get in on the FanDuel action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-offs and even during live play with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play big and win. If you've got a read on the player that's about to perform the best, you need to go ahead and put some money down on it with the same-game parlay. How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement of your first $5 winner? Find out today by going over to FanDuel. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head on over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets. Head on over to FanDuel.com where you can make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so we talked about consensus 4-star linebacker DaQuives Beck, narrowing down to 3 schools, including Oklahoma State, A&M, and OU. So while I was, doing some digging, I run into the 247, and I found it somewhat interesting because we do have some more visits coming up. Robert Allen did an article recently talking about some of the visits coming up. But on top of that, whenever they're talking about some of the visits, they have the classifications of warm, cold, which basically breaks down to interested, not interested, etc. So we're going to go over some of the individuals that are currently and recently being classified as warm, and they have visited Oklahoma State, some of them multiple times, maybe giving an indication on who could be next. Of course, DaQuives Beck needs to be part of this equation, as he only took a handful of visits. Oklahoma State obviously is going to be in that mix. Then you have Jawar Franklin from Dodge City, Kansas, Dodge City Community College, 6'4", 315-pounder. I think anytime you can get somebody from that level, Kansas is phenomenal when it comes to the smaller schools. And, of course, KU and K-State have increasingly gotten better in multiple sports as well. But the Kansas small college game is pretty next level. And we've had some experiences with guys like Tyreek Hill that were beneficiaries of from that level in that area. Jawar Franklin could be the next. We've talked about Colin Thompson multiple times and how he should be a Cowboy. The 6'3", 210-pound edge out of Grand Oaks, Spring, Texas. He's also classified as warm. And typically the warm is like the top 5, top 6 type of thing. You usually don't see the warm designation go down past 6, 7 spots. So it's traditionally top 5-ish, 6-ish from recruiting services, individuals that get a read from these players. Next on the warm list, that could be a Cowboy soon enough, is Jarvis Spires out of Side Springs, Texas. 6'2", 285-pound defensive lineman, is classified as warm and has visited. Then you have Chase Campbell. Chase Campbell is a 6'1", 185-pound wide receiver out of Wolford, Texas. He's a 91 overall, and he's classified as warm designation by 247. Dejon Gaines was classified as warm just a couple days ago. He decided to commit to Tulsa, which is a big surprise because he had a lot of big-time offers. So that is what it is. Keep going. Another warm designation on 247 that could be a Cowboy soon enough is Nehemiah Cologne, the Stillwater High School 6'4", 260-pound native. Should be an Oklahoma State Cowboy, but we do know that there's a lot of competition with like BYU, Michigan State, some other heavy hitters involved in his recruiting. So hopefully we can land the services of Mr. Nehemiah Cologne. Next, warm candidate that has been on campus is Evan Goodwin. We've covered him before, out of Arkansas, 6'7", 325 pounds. He's a 4-star with a 91 overall ranking. Now, we talked about DaQuives Beck. I still haven't given up on Tayon Tank King. I've had the pleasure of covering this kid a few times in a few different events. Absolutely blows my mind some of the things that he can do on both sides of the field. 6'1", 205 pounds. One of the best linebackers in the state of Texas by far. It's going to be hard to fend off some of the individuals. Next, on the warm designation from 247 that has visited is Dakota Dixon, 6'4", 285-pound defensive lineman from Danville, California. Then, of course, the one that would be talked about all day, every day would be Oscar Rios, 4-star quarterback, 91 overall, 6'3", 180 pounds. Yeah, he would be a cornerstone level individual for sure. Next on the warm list with visits is Hudson Woods. Defensive end, 6'3", 225 pounds out of Spring Branch, Texas. Then you have Ryan Estrada, 5'9", 185-pound running back out of El Paso, Texas, followed by another quarterback that we have covered previously, Luke Fahey, 6 foot, 185 pounds. His recruitment is definitely heating up out of Mission Viejo, California. Then you have Christopher Knowles, 6'4", 265-pound defensive lineman out of Lone Star, Frisco, Texas. We've had a lot of success recruiting that area. It would be nice to hammer that home. How about Teray Davis, right up the road for me in Boulder, Colorado? This 6'1", 175-pound athlete is an 88 overall. Could be a Cowboy soon enough. Then we got Quinn Buckey, 6'6", 275-pound offensive tackle out of Bakersfield, California, followed by Jeremiah Favorite, 5'11", 180-pound corner out of Boiling Springs, South Carolina. Preston McDaniel has been on the warm list for quite some time out of Idaho Falls, Idaho, 6'4", 215-pound tight end. Then you have Chance Collins, the athlete that stands 6'1", 185 pounds, is an 89 overall out of Arlington, Texas. Trumaine Purcell, 6'3", 225-pound tight end out of Honolulu, Hawaii, is also classified as warm with visits. So when you look at 247 and scroll down there with all of the individuals that have taken visits, that are set up to take more visits, these are some of the guys that 247 is saying could potentially be part of the Cowboy class. I think, defensively, we've done so well in the transfer portal that I don't know that we need to overload. But at the same point in time, you have, as Oklahoma State, right? We're not Alabama. We're not Texas A&M. We cannot go convince 5 stars from all over America all day, every day to come to Stillwater. It's just not going to happen. Now, we do have a couple, J.K. Johnson and Chindavian Bradley at one point in time were former 5-star blue chip level individuals before going to Ohio State, Tennessee. So we have been able to get a couple of those guys from the transfer portal. But in order for us, in my opinion, to continue to grow the brand of the Big 12 and the brand of the orange and black that we rock particularly, you have to garner more respect in the recruiting realm. The developmental side of the Oklahoma State recipe for success is very well recognized and respected, even by the NFL. But there's always going to be some of those quirky games that they play with the numbers that are involved with the rankings. And we see it beneficial to the SEC and the Big Ten all the time, right? If a guy leaves a Texas, he's downgraded on the stars. If he leaves Oklahoma State and goes to Texas, he automatically gets upgraded on the stars. That's just how it works. And then those statistics are formulated into the overall rankings. It's pretty crazy how there's political layers to all of this. And we got rid of the BCS, right? Because it was proven that a human could manipulate some computer models to give teams an advantage, which is why Oklahoma State was bumped out of the national championship by 0.008 points because of manipulation. So we got rid of the BCS because of the manipulation factor. Yet with the CFP, we're realizing that's never going to change. The manipulation factor, the political side of college football, unfortunately, has a big, ugly head that's not going to go anyway anytime soon. So having guys like Cody Campbell, the Texas Tech, Boone Pickens level toner, having him involved in some of the bumper rails that could be put on some of this NIL recruiting transfer stuff, it is advantageous for the Big 12. But we have to learn to play the game. Texas Tech is currently playing the game. They have one of the top recruiting classes. They have the top transfer class. Not only is it monetary, I think it's also important that Texas Tech does win this season. It's going to be a bad look if Texas Tech spends, not quite A&M money, but close enough and get no results, right? Joe McGuire, a very exuberant individual that I think a lot of people would love to play for. He's got to show it out on the field. And we have to do more in the Big 12. We've always been able to pride ourselves on the development. Well, we don't need a bunch of five-star fictitious numbers because we're going to develop up, just like Kansas State, just like Iowa State. And it's not to say that cannot still happen. It can. But I think it's pretty widely accepted now that if you come to any university and you're not a tried and true starter by year 2, maybe year 3, we're probably moving on. You're probably ready to move on. It's probably advantageous for all parties to move on. So the days of developmentally getting guys that are 2 stars and they're going to be NFL level dudes in the next 4 to 5 years are kind of dying. So you have to hit some home runs, but you also have to play this numerical game that unfortunately is part of the equations when it comes to rankings, and rankings affect dollars and dollars affect recruiting, and it all ties into each other. We have not been playing the recruiting numerical game for quite some time. We're playing it right now, seemingly, but we need to continue to do that. To stay in the top 25 class, we're going to have a commit somewhat soon, just from a numerical perspective, unless it is an Oscar Rios or a Luke Fahey or DaQuives Beck. It's going to take one of those level dudes or Tayon King to kind of keep us under that top 20 threshold. Speaking of, well, actually, now we get to talk a little bit about Cowboy baseball. Yes, the season has in fact come to the close, but not after we put one of the darlings of the SEC to bed. Oklahoma State was able to battle back in the Georgia Regional to take down the Georgia Bulldogs in walk-off fashion to force an elimination game with Duke. And yeah, we were winning 90% of that game. Unfortunately, the last 10% got away from us. I would say that overall, Rob Walton did pretty daggone well, right? Stringing together that staff for that many games. But throwing Mario Pesca as a closer in that Duke scenario didn't make a lot of sense, and it didn't work out in our favor. It is what it is. We are where we are. And the Big 12 as a whole, statistically, did better than the SEC, but not by much. And so now we have to rely on West Virginia, who has one of the worst draws in the country, going to number 6 overall, LSU. Now, we did take down number 7 overall, Georgia, right? An SEC darling that was projected to be the host of a super regional, was taken down by both Duke and Oklahoma State. And obviously, we knocked them out of their regional. We've been there. We felt that pain, but we did not get to feel the joy of moving on. West Virginia does, but they get to feel the sting of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then Arizona had a magical run. It's amazing that they're getting – that makes some white dudes a bad mamma jamma, like a Rock Reggio level bad dude that's worth watching every single Arizona game. But they have a tough draw. They go to number 5 overall, North Carolina. Now, the SEC does still have some dudes involved, right? It is what it is. But they had 13 teams get in. and they only have, was it four teams moving on? That's not a good look for the SEC. And again, it's not like the Big 12 did so much better, but the SEC has Tennessee going to Arkansas. That's what they have left. Now, obviously, you have West Virginia go to LSU. And then you scroll, and then you have Coastal Carolina going to Auburn. And that's it. That's it for the big bad SEC. The ACC actually seems to be controlling college baseball, according to the super regionals right now. The Big 12 does have the ability to kind of make some things interesting. And, if we can take down the number 7 overall seed, it is a possibility that West Virginia could take down the number 6 overall seed. It's a possibility that Arizona could take down the number 5 overall seed. Historically speaking, LSU is a juggernaut of college baseball. They have an expectation of reaching Omaha every single year and playing for national titles. So that's a tough draw for West Virginia. But at the same point in time, getting here is rare. And when you have some teams like Murray State in the mix, that makes it pretty fun. UTSA is having a remarkable run this season. So there's going to be some basketball-style Cinderella teams mixed in here. But the Big 12 is kind of in that category, right? From a record perspective, Arizona, West Virginia, anytime you clear that 40-win threshold, you had a phenomenal year, yeah? Or maybe not phenomenal. You had a very, very, very good season. But some of these teams have the opportunity to make some things more interesting. And why it's important is to make a bigger distinction between us and the SEC. Should West Virginia go into Baton Rouge and beat LSU at the box? No, they shouldn't, which is why it's kind of house money. Should Arizona travel to the other side of the country and take on the number 5 team in America, North Carolina, and get that W? No, probably not. But neither should Murray State. Neither should UTSA. And I know Louisville traditionally is a pretty solid ball club, but they have 38-21 this year. Is one of the lower records. Miami, they squeaked in with a lower record. But outside of those teams, everybody else really has 45, 50 wins. It's an impressive lineup. But what's impressive about it is, once again, the SEC is propped up for nothing. Yes, Florida did win the Natty, but before Florida winning the Natty in basketball, the SEC was having an abysmal showing, and they had the most teams in, and they had one of the worst performances until Florida won it all. And that might be what it takes for baseball as well. The SEC sent 13 teams in to regionals, and they only have 4 teams come out of it. That's not good. It's just more proof, in my opinion, the SEC gets propped up like nobody else in existence, and they can be proven to be somewhat inferior time and time and time again. So it's now time for one of us to capitalize. Should the Big 12 and the ACC be a little bit more friendly? Probably. Should they merge? Maybe not. Should they do exclusive scheduling? Probably not, because you want to be able to take down the SEC schools, like we're about to talk about Oklahoma State possibly being able to take down Oregon. Hey, watch the spring game. That's all I can say. Anywho, go Mountaineers, go Wildcats, go represent the Big 12. We'll be cheering you on. You have 2 of the most difficult draws. So it'll mean more in the Big 12 if we can get this thing done. All right, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast and people out there. You're everything that makes this click. Appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.